Hello there.
All right, everybody. I wanted to take a minute to go a little bit more in depth in the bracketry that we used to put this power steering on this GMC. The truck originally just had manual steering. The box that we used was just a box off of a mid 80s square body. We got in a kit that you use to drill different holes and stuff in your frame to mount the newer power box. Can't recall off the top of our heads where we got it, but it was a pretty cool kit. Anyway, so with that being said, I had a pump that was on our S10 when it had a 4-cylinder in it that I adapted to it. But when we put the V8 in it, we used all the Vortec accessories, so we didn't need that pump, but it worked really good, so we figured we'd put it on the GMC. Problem with that is we had no bracketry to actually put it on the 350. So what we did is originally went to eBay, and according to the listing, this is for small block Chevrolets, which it is. However, not all Saginaw pumps are created equal. The pump that I had, and I can't tell you what year it was off of, it was just a used one, but the problem we ran into with this kit is on the back of the pump you have a molded in metal line for your return hose. These brackets, they did bolt up to the block, and these did bolt up to the pump. Problem being is it sat too close to the engine block, and that return line was hitting the actual engine block. So what we needed to do was space it out a little further. So what we did then is we bought this kit. Now this kit is for a big block Chevy. These triangle pieces operate the same way, except they shifted the pump further away from the engine. Changes we had to make on this, which I want to say between the two kits, this one was made of steel, the other one was aluminum. We did have to drill new holes in the ends here because the spacing on these are for a big block. They were wider in the block than they are for small block, so we used the top holes, drilled new holes in the bottoms. They would line up with the actual small block. But being that these came out further, it shifted the pump out away from the engine far enough. The spacers go between, it bolts up to the block. Now, with that being said, these things are supposed to bolt to the top of the pump, and this is supposed to pivot and use your water pump. There's a hole in the water pump you're supposed to use to tighten up your belt. That was not going to work because of the changes we had to make to the bracket needed to bolt to the engine itself. So once we got that figured out, all we did was just bought one of these off eBay. It's just your universal run-of-the-mill steel alternator belt adjustment, whatever. We did have to shorten it up considerably because it was way too long. Somewhere in this area, drilled another hole like that here to bolt it to the pump. This intersected with the provision on the water pump, and that was what was able to give us the adjustment that we needed. One other thing that we did have to change, though, even though this bracket set allowed the pump to shift away from the engine far enough, we still wanted to space it out a little bit further in order to get like the pulleys and everything to line up. So what we ended up doing was taking one of these brackets and cutting this off, because these are about roughly a 1/4 inch thick, and using that as a spacer behind the big block brackets to shift the pump forward a little bit on the engine, which gave us perfect alignment for the pulleys and everything. So all of these things we got off eBay. It was trial and error, but I just wanted to let you know, if you're watching this video and you're at different points of the video, you're going to see different bracketry because we kept running into snags and whatnot. So I figured I'd take a minute to explain. We used parts of one kit, parts of another kit, and then a different adjustment arm. So I hope this helps. Alright, so while we're waiting on the fuel pressure regulator to arrive for the ACES fuel injection, we figured we'd turn our attention to power steering. So this pump works really, really well. It was actually on the S10 when we had the 4-cylinder in it. I actually made a bracket to actually bolt this to the engine because it had manual steering, so I converted it over for the V8 swap. So we got this kit off of eBay, and these brackets bolt to the pump like so, and then you got these long bolts with spacers that go through each one of them, and then this bolts to the block. Then this thing is your adjuster jigger that's supposed to bolt onto the pump there, and then on the water pump is where the adjustment thing is going to go. So right now we're just trying to get everything slapped together and see how it fits. Alright, so got all the brackets on, trying to get the pump mounted to the engine. We're already discovering there's an issue. It's really hard to see, but the pump sits back just a hair too far and the return line's hitting the block. So what we're going to do now is get the pulley onto the pump so we can see where the alignment needs to be, to see if we can shim it out away from the block just a little bit to clear that line. So we'll get back to you.
Much later.
Okay, back on this power steering thing. The pump is mounted, the pulley is pressed on, everything's all lined up. Ethan just finished putting the lines on. Pressure line runs up through here, down under the pump. Return line comes up out of here and loops into there. It's not how GM intended it, but that's how we're doing it because we're making this work. If anybody has ever put power steering on a 63 C10, it's kind of a pain. So the pump is a pump we already had. We had to use 2 different bracket systems off eBay. And for lines, I got these off Rock Auto. This is the pressure line, Edelman 71088, and the return line was Edelman 80442.
442.
Anyway, had to, after this one was in, had to bend it up just a little wee bit to make sure it didn't chafe on the frame. Other than that, it went right in. And had to turn a little bit off the end of this where it goes on here and clamps on. But all in all, it'll be fine. So right now, John's in town trying to find a belt because the one we have is a little bit too short. So once we get a belt and get some fluid in here, hopefully we should have power steering. Alright, don't know if you can hear me or not, but power steering is on and functional. System is bled. Go ahead, John, turn the wheel. Beautiful. Alright. Got the hood. Okie dokie. We've been working on this thing off and on for the past couple years. We started with an empty shell. Now, it should be able to roll out of here under its own power. Go for it, Johnny.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Alright everybody, we're going to end this video here. Sorry I didn't get more footage of the truck actually driving from the other garage to this garage. But it did move under its own power. It took 2 years on and off because we got this thing 2 years ago and it was a bare shell. There was no wiring, there was no drivetrain, there was nothing. And in that time, rewired the whole truck, rebuilt a 350 for it, had to rebuild change out the diff because the carrier was busted, we found out. And whole brake system, everything. But so it moves, stops, runs with fuel injection, power steering now. So now it's back here, and we affectionately call this building the toy box, because if Ethan does a little panoramic, it's full of projects, parts. My 69 Corvette is here undercover. So this is where we keep everything that won't fit in the other garage. So, but winter is upon us here, probably starting tomorrow, so we're getting everything put away. And my new Vet's going to go in the garage that we work out of for the winter. So, upcoming videos on the Vet will be coming soon. So, with that, like, subscribe, share. Thank you all for watching. Catch you next time.